Good evening. Hi everybody. Happy Wednesday. I don't know if anybody trades today. If anybody trade? I don't know if you trade stocks or whatever, but today was what they call Fed Day. And there have been a lot of earnings recently with some of these bigger companies. And the market moved around a lot today. It was a crazy day. Hey Sheila, good to see you. I'm just finishing. I always like to show you guys what I eat. This is 3-bean chili with macaroni and some zucchini. Just simple, very simple food, very inexpensive. I'm done for the most part. There is a cookie I want to eat, but I think I have to wait till someone else starts talking. Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, I got the chili from Whole Foods, so it's nothing special. It's a vegetarian vegan chili. Since you know, I no longer eat meat. I do miss it, by the way. It does taste good. But people say, how do you get your protein? The way you get your protein is you eat a lot of beans. And believe it or not, I didn't know this, but until I started studying this stuff, a lot of foods have a balance of protein, fat, and carbohydrates. So if you do the math, you can get the amount of protein you need from. But about 1.5 cans of beans is enough for most of your protein for a day. Americans eat, and most people in the West eat way too much protein. And a lot of it just gets excreted out of your body. So if you eat, let's say, for breakfast, you might have eggs and toast or whatever with butter, and then maybe you have, I don't know, a Caesar salad for lunch, and let's say you have pork chops for dinner. You've gotten way more protein than you needed for that day, and your body just gets rid of what it doesn't use. So anyway, and by the way, the other thing is about seafood, which is really sad. It is so hard to get seafood that's not tainted by pollution, PCBs, all this crazy modern stuff. And I don't think there's a waterway on the planet that doesn't have some trace of some of this stuff, which is really sad. But yeah, the other thing about eating a healthy diet is, which is obviously, if you go out traveling, you have to take your own food with you because it's so hard to find places where you can eat healthy food. And you go out and every place you go, it's sugar, fat, you know, milk, dairy, animal foods. Anything that's convenient is usually that. There is a place, I don't know if you have this in your area, probably not. I think there's a business that I think they have another one called, what's the name of it? Anyway, it's like a salad bar place, but a little more fancy, and you can pick, they do sell proteins and stuff, but you can build your own like really healthy meal with, you know, you don't have to put dressing on it. They have things like sweet potatoes and spinach and other greens, and they have like all sorts of vegetables like edamame, the whole 9 yards. And it's like $12 or $13 for you can make as big a plate as you want. It's really good. So that's good. And then they have some other ones that are, somebody's asking, what is my diet? It was exclusively vegan for about 1.5 years. I had gained some weight and I just wanted to lose it. To each his or her own, I just don't like gaining weight. And because of my Gulf War problems, I wasn't able to exercise. I still can't, unfortunately, exercise the way I used to. Because I would eat whatever I wanted and just, you know, exercise. But now that I'm a little older, your metabolism slows down. So I had to change what I ate. So I went to an all-vegan diet for about 1.5 years. I lost, believe it or not, I lost 30 pounds in like 2 months, which is crazy, I know, right? And it's like 27 pounds, I think it was. And I'm not a big guy. I was about 195 pounds. Now I'm about 170. But anyway, but you know, over time, you kind of, you know, you have a snack here, there, you cheat. So I do have some stuff. I have a little butter here and there, not much. Or I might get a cookie that might have eggs in it. I don't know. But I don't like go out and buy eggs or buy, you know, none of that stuff. So mostly healthy stuff. I try to drink as much water as I can. I try to get as much something green inside me, like a big salad or a lot of green vegetables every day. I probably don't get 5 servings though. I mean, a lot of people do it way better than I do. My diet is probably on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being perfect like Tom Brady and 1 being like horrible like Artie Lang. Probably about a 7.5, 8, maybe 8, but I could be way better. Thank you very much. Says, I'm a veteran supporter of your causes. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, I've had a lot of people reach out to me, obviously, you know, given what's happening. But anyway, I appreciate those who are expressing support, and I understand those who are not in that category too as well. I'm going to talk about some of the news today. I don't know if people saw that President Biden addressed what happened in Jordan with the 3 American soldiers. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to talk about Imran Khan, the charges that went against the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, who, by the way, I think is a great person, and being, of course, politically vilified because He's somebody who wants to look at, any leader that wants to look out for his own people is vilified, right? And gets caught up in this whole game, which is really sad. And then one of the topics we're going to talk, I was talking to somebody who's in the audience, and we were talking about this, that, and the other, and the conversation came up about like where are things really going? Like what are some of the possible outcomes of all this? It feels like, I don't know if you feel this way, everybody, but to me it feels like there's a new chapter. That what's happened in Gaza and what's happened with the post-pandemic, it just feels like we're entering into this is like a new era. That was like a turning of a page, so to speak. And I don't think this next chapter goes that great. This is like the troubling part of the story. So at least speaking for the United States, we've had it pretty damn good for a long time. And I was watching a segment by Colonel Douglas Macgregor. If you don't know who he is, he's a former advisor in the Trump administration. I think he's a smart guy, and many of you probably know his work. But I was just watching an interview with him, and he says, you know, that the U.S. is doing some crazy stuff, like its current leadership in its unwavering support of Israel and what Israel's doing. You know, he believes, like I do, that even if you're pro-Israel, you know, I'm not, but even if you were pro-Israel, I'm not for people like stepping on their own foot and doing stupid stuff to themselves. And I think if you look at this objectively, Israel's just they're not making themselves look good, right? They're doing so much more than they have to. Now, it's their country; they can do whatever the hell they want. But Colonel McGregor's point was they're probably running themselves into a ditch by doing this. And if there is a global conflict, it could be that there may be a complete rearranging of the political systems over there, maybe even the statehoods. I don't know. But, you know, why put yourself in a position where that can happen, I guess, is the question. And I think it's hubris, right? Just like the U.S. has hubris, you know, we kind of, you know, wave our heavy hand across the world. We go into all sorts of places. We, you know, drop things on people's heads all the time and don't, seemingly, who cares, right? If like I say, it's a callous disregard for human life. And that's a bad way to be. So, you know, I'd rather have the U.S. use a sharper tongue but not do as much versus just drop stuff everywhere. And, you know, let's face it, the United States hasn't faced anything on the continental United States in our territory since the 1860s when we had our Civil War. And, you know, if you think about it, there's a lot of unrest in the country. You know, things are getting tougher for a lot of people. You know, expenses are going up, and they're just starting to announce major layoffs. Like UPS announced, I think it was 112,000 maybe it was 12,000 workers they're going to let go. And if you don't know, UPS just had a big contract where their union negotiated an amazingly good contract for the workers because UPS is making over $2 billion of profit per quarter. Record profits for the company. And so the workers are like, hey, you know, what about us? And so they negotiated, they threatened to go on strike, but right before they went on strike, the company gave them a better deal. So, but that's the union, not everybody's unionized there. So the non-union workers, they can't be let go, but the non-union workers can be. And supposedly a lot of the workers that are being let go are being replaced with AI, artificial intelligence, which between automation and artificial intelligence, a lot of jobs in these developed countries are going to go away, which makes it even tougher, right? People are already struggling to make ends meet. Some people are working 2 or 3 jobs wherever they can find one. And what if there just aren't jobs? You know, let's say the checkouts at your store are 99%, you know, automated. They might even have a robot now. That's, you know, the person comes over if you're having trouble. They may have a robot that does that now, you know. So it may be no human beings except for maybe a lonely store manager watching the security cameras. So anyway, yeah, it's a tough situation. And I think if I had to guess, I would say that the best years of the U.S. probably peaked in the late 1990s. Some people say it was in the 70s. And as far as quality of life for people, I do believe that's the case. But as far as like economic welfare and people doing their best, I think that the late 90s was probably the last hurrah. And since then it's downhill. Now, if you're super rich, that's not the case, right? I'm talking about the average human being. If you're of the ultra wealthy, you're doing great right now. I mean, you're probably not paying much, if any, taxes. You're probably borrowing money against your assets to pay your living expenses, and then you can take the interest you pay back your loan and deduct it from your other income, from your dividends or whatever. Great situation if you can get it. But for the vast majority of people, they're sliding in the other direction. I think people are angry about that, right? And rightly so. So we'll talk about some of that. There's some consternation, and who knows? I mean, what happens, you know, if something does pop off like a war or some sort of conflict and the U.S. is embroiled in it at a high level? I don't know if we have a peaceful transfer of power during that situation. Maybe somebody will claim that because of X, Y, and Z situation, we can't, you know, who knows? But those are all things that could cause trouble. Or there could be an election like we talked about, and it could be another contentious situation like we had this last time. And some people dismiss it like, oh, that's just a bunch of bunk, you know, court cases, blah, blah, blah. But there are a lot of people that take that seriously, and they're angry, and they believe that they got a raw deal. And I don't know for sure what happened. I tend to keep an open mind, as you know, about stuff and try to look at evidence and not, you know, pick sides accordingly. But there's a lot of videotape, a lot of evidence that was not released to the public, you know, thousands of hours of recordings that some of which did, that cloudy the waters quite a bit, right? So anyway, we can talk about that some more too. And another thing I want to talk about tonight, if you're open to it, is, you know, what would happen, and obviously, what's the worst that could happen? Obviously, we're talking about an exchange of intercontinental ballistic, you know, missiles armed with, you know, the atomic tips, right? We don't want that to happen. That would be the worst. But what's the second to worst thing we could have? What's the second next thing that would be bad for the U.S.? Well, I don't know if you know this or not, but our power grid is not very, it's not very solid, it's not very robust. And it's very vulnerable either to hacking or even a pulse-based weapon. So they have these weapons that are basically, you know, not explosions or like energy weapons that can disable parts or all of electric grid. And it wouldn't take much to deploy these and we'd be without power. And it's not like you can just turn it back on the next day. It disables it for a long time until you can rebuild it. And then the question is, what happens? What happens then? This is, we'll talk about this. I don't want to get down to that quite yet, but we'll talk about it. But when we get to the point where we talk about that, remind me to go through the exercise of talking about what life is really like from day 1 to day 90 to day 180. Like, what's life really going to be like if that does happen? It's not pleasant. But anyway, I also want to talk about the fact that three, you know, I guess you can call it Palestinians, other people calling them militants, other people calling them T-words, some Mossad agents in a hospital in Gaza entered the hospital pushing somebody in a wheelchair disguised in Arab clothing, you know, Palestinian garb. And they were able to get in, go to a particular room where they had intelligence, and they actually, you know, unalived, execution style, 3 younger Palestinians. They were very young. I think they were between 18 and 20. That's all I know. So the bottom line there is, you know, this is a question, right? As far as international law goes, if you have people who are sick, hurt in a hospital, the war, rules of war says you can't just go into the hospital and, you know, bam, bam. There's a process for detaining people, prisoners of war, or you know, due process of some type based on the war, on the, you know, tribunal or whatever. You can't just go in and summarily remove. Then there's another story of 30 plus people whose, you know, remains were unearthed. They were inside of like plastic bags towards the north of Gaza, and they were found by digging up some sand, and they were just, you know, sort of a shallow burial. And I don't know the exact number, but it looked like their hands had been bound behind their back. And then I'm sure if you peruse TikTok or Instagram, you probably saw this stuff. I didn't spend as much time online today. I had a lot of other stuff I had to do, and the market was, it was what's called the Fed day, where they announce interest rate policies, and the market usually goes haywire. So I usually have to watch it when that's going on, because there's a lot of volatility that you can trade off of. So yeah, it's an interesting time we're in. And there are also some predictions, by the way. I don't know if anybody has a 401k or an investment portfolio or whatever that whole thing is. I don't have that. I a long time ago got out of the market as far as, you know, for me, and again, everybody's different. I couldn't bring myself to like profit with the system that I'm critical of, right? I mean, yeah, it'd make life a hell of a lot easier if I would have bought Apple stock and held on to it for 20 years. I would probably be independently wealthy, but I'm not, and I didn't do that. So I'm willing to what's called short sell stocks, which means I bet on them going down, but I don't buy them to hold them like a lot of people do. So, but anyway, if you do have a portfolio of those assets, whether it be index funds, which is just the general market, or individual stocks or equities, or even bonds, you know, there's some people talking about where this could go. It's very, very, very extended to the upside, and it's on very light volume. If you don't know what that means, it means that the number of shares, the purchasing of these assets is not normally as robust as you would expect in terms of the number of shares being bought for it to drift higher. And so what happens when something goes inordinately high, they call it going parabolic. It kind of goes like that, and then it tends to do a little hiccup, come back up, and then boom. And that's what happens. And so what goes up very quickly they say, this is the old adage, they say stocks take the stairs up and they take the elevator down. And that's because fear is more powerful than greed. And as people see something falling, they just rush to the exits because they don't want to be the last person out the door. So yeah, somebody says if you've been short Tesla, if you don't know what that is, that means that you're able to go to a broker. For those who don't know stocks, you can always buy stock, right? We know what that is. You buy ABC company, you hold on to it, and hopefully it goes up. Well, what you can do is, let's say a company you think it's overvalued, like Tesla, for example, recently has been coming down. Someone prior to it coming down could have said, hey, I think it's going to get lower in price. What I'm going to do is I'm going to borrow the shares from another person at a broker, let's say whatever, Fidelity. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to borrow those shares and sell them into the market to somebody else. That's called going short the stock. Now, there have to be shares available to short. For smaller companies, there aren't always shares. But what it means is that you have the obligation, because you borrowed them, to buy them back. And if they go down in value, you are spending less money to buy them back. And so you keep the difference. However, if the stock or whatever goes up, then you will lose whatever the additional money you have to pay. You sold them for 100, now you got to buy them back for 120. Not good, because you just lost 20 bucks a share. But if you sell it into the market at 100 short and you buy it back at 80, you get to keep the $20. And that's how shorting works. So we talked about GameStop. Remember that whole GameStop thing, the whole, meme stock, diamond hand stuff. The reason that happened the way it did is that a lot of the institutions, the big money banks, had shorted GameStop all the way down as it was coming down in value. The company was not doing well financially, and so therefore the shares were going down in value. And so a bunch of hedge funds, being kind of lazy, big money people, were just piling in, adding to these short positions with the obligation to buy the shares back. Well, what happened was a bunch of people came in and bought the shares up, and it just drove the price up. And as it went higher, there weren't enough shares to buy. No one would sell their shares. So there wasn't you couldn't get out of your short position. So every day it just went up and up. And it turned into this disaster where I think like $20 billion of hedge fund money got lost. And it went to people like you and me. It was like Wall Street bets, I think they called it. So somebody says, yeah, I'm one of those meme traders. Good for you, Jake. I mean, if you got involved in that, great. I watched it happen. I don't usually play in risky options or stocks that are that volatile, just because if you don't do it right, you can get really beat up pretty bad. But I wish I would have. Some people that bought call options, which is basically a bet that it's going to go higher, it has leverage, they made millions. And some people who bought the shares would have made millions, but they didn't sell it, and it's drifted all the way back down where a lot of people were actually below where they bought it. So at some point, if you want, we can go through investing. So I think trading and investing is fascinating. We could talk about it I could talk to you about that for 30 straight days, nonstop, 2 hours a day, and we still wouldn't cover 5% of what you need to know. It's a lot to know. But I've spent I'm watching the market since 1990 or so. Yeah, so I've been watching them for 33 years. Just after I started learning about the Israel-Palestine thing, I started following the markets as I was in the Army. So yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I could teach all of you how to trade. Like literally, I could teach you different methods to do it. But here's the thing. I could tell you how to play basketball, right? I can tell you got to dribble, you got to run, you got to jump, you got to shoot. I could tell you all that, right? But doing it is a whole other thing, right? And so the people that are good at trading, they've been practicing and trying it over and over for, sometimes decades. And then what happens is that you just learn all the things not to do. And like I watched the market today. I made a little bit of money, not much, but I knew exactly what was likely to happen because of how I know to read. It's like learning a language. Seriously, it's just like learning a new language. And once you get a sense of how the language works, you can kind of figure out how to fill in certain blanks or sentences. And the markets tend to do a lot of the same things over and over again. It's fascinating that way. The key is having the faith that when you make a decision, you're taking on a fixed amount of risk and you have to get in. You can't be too afraid. And then when it does move to a designated target where you think it might go, you have to take some profits. You can't just let it go. And then, because sometimes you can go in, it works out great, but because you're trying to be greedy, you want to get every last little nook and cranny, you end up losing all your money or even then some. And then the other thing is what a lot of people struggle with in the markets is they'll get in. Let's say you're buying a stock for $100, keep it simple, and you want it to go to 110 bucks, but if it goes down below 96, you're going to get out. So you're risking basically $4 a share to try to make 10 bucks a share. That's your plan. Well, how a lot of people do is when it goes down to that 96, they start to hope and pray. It goes to 95, they hold on. Well, it's got to go back up from 90, all that's right. And so they stay in too long and they get crushed. So usually it's the big losses that set you back in trading. So they say that the best traders, they're the best losers because they always cut their losses small, and every once in a while something just takes off in the direction. Someone's asking about crypto, which is Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other altcoins they talk about. Listen, very speculative, very manipulable. Manipulable, meaning that when you have a stock or any instrument of trade, it has what's called a float, which means how much of it exists. So if you have a smaller amount of something, people who own a lot can shift the prices quickly because they're moving a larger portion. The more you have, a little bit of movement makes it much harder to move the market. Really close together, lots of movement. Further apart, meaning more float, more shares, more whatever. Even if you have a lot of money, it's hard to move the market. So in crypto, what happens is there are these people called whales. They're like a lot of the original investors. They bought it way back when it was trading for $5 a Bitcoin or whatever. Now it's what, 38, 40,000 or something like that. And there's very few investors that hold a lot of it. And let's face it, the investment game is rife with collusion and all sorts of crazy stuff. It's just the way it works. So they'll get together and they'll move the market, right? They'll say, okay, we're going to run it down to 32,000 and then we're going to buy back. And that kind of stuff happens. Now, what you learn to do as a trader is you learn to figure out how to look at those things. And when you read a chart, you can kind of see places where things happen because you can't hide it if the price moves there. And then they try to figure out how to hop on the backs of those big players. That's trading basically. Yeah, I think crypto is very dangerous in that you never know when the rug pull is going to happen. And by the way, there's a difference between investing in something, which is typically a buy and hold strategy, and versus trading in and out of it. Some people do a little of both, but most people just want to buy something and tuck it away and go about their life, right? And the problem with crypto is that just as fast as it can jump up, it can go to nothing pretty much. And what could cause that? The government. The government could come in and make it illegal. And they can do that. They can change its status from a security to some other status, and it can't be traded anymore, and it drops in value. Where is Hind? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Yeah, so this is the thing about assets, right? So this gets back into the conversation of money and stuff, and we'll get back to some of the issues of the day in a second. We kind of veered off in this lane, but if you have dollars, like US dollars or euros or British pounds or whatever, it seems great if you have a lot of money. But what happens if the system breaks down and no one wants your money, right? What do you have to trade with, or what do you have to work with? And that's why having things like real estate and vehicles and maybe farm animals or gold or silver, something that people will want that has real value. I know a guy, his name is George Gammon, and what he did was he didn't know what was going to happen in the future, so he went and invested in, I think, 15 or 20 Ford trucks, like ones that aren't made with the chips. So if we have an EMP pulse, they'll still work. I don't know if you know this, but most of our modern cars are computerized, and so if we have an electro pulse, none of the cars will work. You can put all the gas in it you want. So I have an electric car, but your gas car or my electric car wouldn't work if we had that happen, which, it's just more trouble. We'll talk about that a little bit later too. So, yeah, I've had conversations about these issues briefly before. Some of these subjects are really in depth, and they require probably multiple lives or even multiple series. What I'll probably start doing is as I build my community of people who participate in my Patreon, I'll start to go do some lives over there about these types of, other subjects, because quite frankly, listen, I've been criticized like crazy for this, like, oh, you're doing this for money. No, but I, like anybody else, like you, I mean, I have a rent payment, I have a car payment, I have food I have to buy, I have a dog and 2 cats and I have to feed them, basic stuff. I live a very meager life, but I have to bring something in if I'm going to do this most of my time. I'm not doing it full time because I'm trying to do the trading thing, but trading is hard as hell, Yeah, we'll talk about bricks. Well, anyway, yeah, it may be nobody's business, but I'm just saying, for people who are critical about you're doing this just for money, I would never try to pimp people for money, especially given what we're seeing right now, because that's just unethical, right? And some people do that. They take advantage of situations and raise money. And some people say you're paid to talk about certain things. I mean, come on. That's ridiculous. I have found people, unfortunately, on the other side that are paid to talk because I've been able to prove it because they've, it's on videotape. Anyway. So let's get back to what's happening in the news. So we talked about the fact that 3 potential militants were harmed and unalived in a hospital because the Israeli intelligence services went in dressed up as, I guess Palestinians, or however you want to say Arabs, and then they unalived them. And that's very questionable according to international law. One of the U.S. spokespersons was questioned, the State Department person, and just gave a ridiculous, the typical brush-off answer, like, well, we're not really sure of the circumstances, and listen, let's just face it, they just went in and they murdered these poor people, right? There was also the discovery of 30 bodies. We talked about that earlier. They were buried beneath a sandy area, and they had their hands twist tied behind their back, zip tied, and they were all unalive too. Again, you know, we hear a lot from the other side about the 7th, and horrible, right? I mean, to whatever extent and to the extent we know atrocities occur, horrific. But it's almost as if they believe that somehow it's just that one group that did those sorts of things while it's happening in real time. Probably things that cause much more harm to people, not just the things being dropped from the sky, which has been indiscriminate and hard to take, but all the things on the ground, you know, snipers, and you know what happened in the hospital, and what happened to people being buried under the sand. You know, it's like over and over and over again, and so it's unfair to focus on one without the other. Is my point. I think, yeah, they're WAR crimes, right? That's the way it is. And by the way, I'm trying to be very, very careful with the things I talk about, the way I talk about them, because, you know, TikTok is really bearing down hard on pro-Palestinian content. I'm sure you've heard people talking about it constantly if you watch your For You feed, but it's like they're just looking for any excuse to get rid of certain people. Speaking of which, let me park for a second and just share why I'm going to talk about this. So for those who don't know my story, I've been on TikTok for about 3.5 months, I guess, maybe a little longer. And in the first 5 weeks, my account came down that many times. That's not quite 5 fingers. And I don't expect any one account, especially people who have a following, they're just taking them down left and right now. That's for any excuse will do. So what I would implore you to do, if you don't mind, is I have a backup account. And the last time this happened to me, a lot of people who did not follow my backup account, who later found me like a month later, said, "Oh, where'd you go? Where'd you go?" I said, "I didn't go anywhere. I just had to go on my backup account because the rug got pulled." So if you don't mind, please, especially like right now while we're talking, if you don't mind, you'll still be able to hear me. But if you back out to by clicking on my face, you'll get to my main page. There's a thing below my bio. It says Linktree Chip Barnes. It's clickable. If you're outside the U.S., it's not clickable, but it's written in my bio. To get to my backup account, it's Truthseeker670. And by the way, I really don't care if you follow my backup account for the content. I do have some content that I only put there, but it's just for the fact that if I have to shift to the other one in case things go bad. But you can go there at the very first link on the top of my link tree. It just says TikTok backup. Click on that, follow, you're done. Then you got me. It's funny though, I have about 112,000 followers, I guess, which is awesome. But I think I only have like 4,200 on my backup, so way more here than there. So it is what it is. Eventually I find my way back into people's For You pages, I guess, but it'd be better to have, you know, a larger following over there. It'd be good. Anyway, enough said about that. So we can talk more about trading at a different time. It's something I could spend a lot of time talking about. So it's not easy, and it's not something you're going to make a lot of money off just by hearing what I have to say. So don't worry about that. In fact, most people who try it lose all their money at least 2 or 3 times before they, you know, even start to do it in a more intelligent way. Because let's face it, everybody wants the quick and easy money, right? Myself included. I didn't lose all my money, but I've been through stages where I've been more, you know, a little less cautious than I should have been. But it's all the market is more experienced people taking money from the less experienced people. That's it. That's all the market is, because it's a zero-sum game. Someone else has the other side of the trade, and you're going to win and take their money, or vice versa. So that's an interesting thing. Also, we talked about the soldiers, and this is the key thing. President Biden announced that there's going to be some type of response to what happened in Jordan. He said that they're not sure against Iran. They're not sure Iran did it, but he believes that they provided the munitions, which is kind of ironic because what has America been doing this whole time with Israel and Ukraine, right? So I don't know. Again, it's all the rules that I set apply to you, but not to me, right? That's the whole system. But there's going to be some kind of a response. He did then say he does not want to stir this up into a regional war. So hopefully it's something that's sane and not too inflammatory. Because, yeah, I mean, the U.S. has more double standards than any other country on the planet. Oh, by the way, I want to mention one person here while I can, because this just popped back into my head. If you're not following a guy on TikTok, his name is Midwestern Marks. Midwestern Marks, M-A-R-X. His name is Eddie Liger. I hope you follow him. He did a really cool video on North Korea and the history of how things got to where they are today. And it's totally different than what you probably think. And when you see it, you're going to be like, damn, another one of these situations where the U.S. did some crazy stuff and things ended up, you know, all out of whack. Yep, that's kind of the history of all this, right? So unfortunately, our country just, I was talking to somebody before we came on the live, I'm like, the US just can't help itself. Always has to meddle and meddle and meddle. So I'm trying to keep an eye on the comments too while we can come here, while we're going here. Somebody's in the guest queue. Ghost is here. Before I bring up guests, I know I usually talk at least for 30 minutes sometimes, and I'm sorry if I haven't seen your comments. But the bottom line is, I did want to talk about this EMP thing, because I think, listen, as far as threats to our future, I think it's interesting to just talk through some of this stuff and think about, okay, what would happen? What would we do if we were in this situation? It's certainly possible. So, the world's a very, very, I think we're in a much more precarious situation than people believe. I think if people really understood how close we are to the edge right now, they'd be freaking out. Because everything here in America seems kind of normal. Everyone's still doing their job, and they're still getting stuff at the store and doing their, going out to eat, all the regular stuff people in America do. By the way, I'm sure some people are pissed. Netflix, if you don't know this, Netflix just added advertising inside, because Netflix was ad-free for the longest time. So you just come in, watch whatever you want. Now there's ads you have to watch. I mean, how greedy are these people? They charge you a subscription and then they put ads in. It's like, damn. Anyway, but things seem kind of normal here, right? I mean, most people are doing, like, I'm here doing my thing with you right now. I'm not dealing with what the people of Gaza are dealing with, which is obviously horrific. And I'm very grateful for that I'm not in that situation, and I feel so horrible. And by the way, I don't have an update on Mansour, for anybody who's asking. I didn't see the question, but yeah. Anyway, the greed of the American capital system makes me sick. But yeah, I don't think Netflix has any, someone's asking if it's BDS, meaning boycott safe. Yeah, I don't understand. I don't think there's any connections to Israel, but getting back to that. So by the way, there is one company that I saw today, that if you want to make your own website, there's one called Wix, W-I-X. That's an Israel-owned company. So if you ever see somebody using Wix, if it says, this website built, let them know, hey dude, not okay. So anyway, getting back to this, so just think what would happen though, if this were to happen, okay? Let's say you wake up one night and power's off. You're like, oh boy, someone must have, hit the telephone pole or something like that. So, you wait for it to come back on. Usually it comes back on an hour or two, maybe a half day, sometimes 2 days. Sometimes if you have a really bad storm, it might take a week or two, right? So, but eventually it's coming back, right? So, okay, whatever, I got to store my food in some ice or something like that if you have perishables that your refrigerator can. But what if it didn't come back on? And what if it happened everywhere? Because normally we have water. If the power goes out, right? If you go to your water tap or what was a landline telephone, it would still work. Because the power that powers the pumps and powers the signal that comes through our phone lines is powered elsewhere with backup systems. So, when we turn on our water in our house, whether it be running a toilet or a shower or sink or whatever, that power comes from pumps that are electrified at your municipality. And if those pumps go down, you don't have water. We don't have water. So imagine if you get up that night, you go into the kitchen, you're like, oh, I'll get a glass of water. You turn on your tap and nothing comes out. You're like, oh, damn, this is weird. And you don't have cases of water sitting around, right? Well, then what do? So you wait for the power to come back on, and you wait, and you try calling your power company, but there's no answer. You're like, what? And you try to charge your cell phone, there's no charging, and you don't have a solar charger, and you've been so reliant on the power by your bed every night, that little cord you plug in or whatever you do, and you just take it for granted. But what if it doesn't work? So now your phone isn't working, the towers are all down. You have a phone that basically can play games, right? Or you can, whatever you can do locally without the internet, but all the internet goes down. So no internet, no running water, no cell phones or communication. Nothing if you have unless you need oxygen or something that runs on any medical systems that are electrified, done, not working. And anything else you'll have, let's say it's 95 degrees outside, you're in Phoenix and that's in the morning, no air conditioning. Let's say you're in the 20th floor of an office building or apartment complex and it gets to be like 130 degrees if you don't have air conditioning. Well, guess what? It's going to climb to 130. You're going to be opening a window if you can. You try to go to the store, there's nothing at the store. The stores are closed. The food is long since gone. And you may live in a town with, let's say, a couple 100,000 people, maybe 500,000, or if you're in a bigger city, you might have several million. Just imagine if everybody encountered that same problem at once, at the same time, and everybody wanted the same thing that you wanted, which was to get something to eat, find something to drink, and either stay warm or cool down, right? And didn't have any ability to communicate and figure out a plan B. You just have to walk around and figure shit out. Imagine that for a second. Just imagine what that and this is on the second or third day. So second or third day, stores are gone, right? No trucks coming in. All the trucks are disabled because the electronics got, hit in the burst. And the only thing that's getting in is from, let's say, if you live near a local farm, maybe somebody has some food if it's summertime, or maybe it's wintertime and all they have is maybe livestock or, stuff that's been in their systems of storage. But just think about that for a second. So after about the third day, you don't have running water, you're not taking a bath, you probably don't have any water, whether it's for other use or even drinking. You might have some stuff in your cabinets like sodas or, I don't know, Perrier, but pretty soon that's going to be gone. You maybe have some stockpiles in your cabinet. Let's say you have enough to go for 2 weeks or whatever you have in your canned goods and stuff. But if you have something that lasts you 2 weeks in your family and somebody doesn't, take a wild guess what's probably going to happen next. Right? Someone's going to come knock on your door and say, hey, dude, can I? And if it's friendly, they may say, hey, do you mind if I share in some of the stuff? You may say, sure. Initially, you're like, okay, sure. Things are going to get worked out. So you let them come in and maybe you feed them. Maybe it's a husband, a wife, and their 2 kids and their dog or something, and they come over and you're very kind to them and you let them eat with you. And that's great. And you have to have community during this, right? But there's some other not so nice people that maybe could care less about you and your friends and their dog, and they just want what they want. And so imagine some of that starting to occur. And I'm not doing this to fearmonger. I'm simply painting like a fictional novel of what could happen if things went a certain way. And this is not even counting the chance of anything happening from a conflict standpoint. Like this is just saying the sheer basics of life, what happens. And so I like to point this out. We really are pretty simple. We're like any other biological animal. We need water, we need food, we need some kind of shelter from the elements. And that's really all you have to absolutely survive. You can't get hyperthermia, hypothermia, you can't thirst to death, and you can't starve to death. But otherwise, you'll live through it. It may be pretty damn miserable, but you'll survive. And a lot of what's going on right now in Gaza is along those lines, because life's basics have been cut off to people, which is unthinkably bad, right? A lot of what I'm painting for what we would endure is very similar to what they are enduring. So it's a hard thing to get our heads around, but it's a distinct possibility. Because if nations around the world just get sick and tired of the United States just doing all the crazy stuff it does, there's and if things escalate over there, one of the tools they could use to make our lives really miserable is to either hack into or pulse our grid. It's very vulnerable. So that's an interesting thought exercise, I think, to go through that. And I don't stay up at late night thinking about it, but it crossed my mind tonight. I was having a conversation with somebody and it just popped into my head, so I thought I'd talk with you all about it tonight. I usually cover some of the strangest things out of the blue. I don't know. My brain is strange. So, but just think of the impact of that, and what do you do if things start getting contentious, right? Neighbors, groups. Obviously, a lot of people in this country own fire things that go bang, bang. But a lot of people don't. And that's one of the words we can't say, by the way. You got to be very careful around that language. And then what do you do? What if you don't have that? What if you're somebody who doesn't believe in that because that's not your culture? Well, somebody who does have that has a huge advantage over you, right? As we're seeing right now with, the lifelong experience of most Palestinians. And that makes a terrible situation if somebody decides that your house is their next visit. So this is all crazy things to think about, right? And you may say, well, that's never going to happen, man. We're the United States, we're the #1 country. We have all these bases covered. They wouldn't let that happen, right? They. Guess what? There is no they. They is us. And there are systems in place, a lot of which are privatized, right? Private companies don't have the same obligation to the community as a municipality may have, that, they're looking to make money. And they're not looking to supply stuff to keep people going. They're looking to make a profit, or otherwise they're not going to supply it, right? That's their shareholders are their first commitment. So, I don't know, it's unthinkable. It's like, kind of Mad Max, if you've ever seen that movie with Mel Gibson. And, I think and this is people that have researched this, say that if something like this were to happen in the United States, because we're so heavily dependent on the systems that serve the people, and elsewhere as too, but especially here, most people don't have self-sufficiency. They don't, they don't can their own food. They don't grow their own food. Some do, but not many. And even if they did, they don't have sufficient quantities stored up for long periods of time. It could be a complete disaster. And they say that in 9 months or a year, up to 90% of the population could no longer be here after 9 months of that. And that's a combination of, of course, starvation and, people getting into skirmishes and all the things that would happen, all the mayhem that would be a part of that. And then who would maintain order at that point? Like, think about it. What would happen to the government systems, with the military somehow? Because you got to remember, a thing that goes bang can work without electricity, right? But, you have to have ways of getting around to use it. And there'd probably be a lot of people on horseback, a lot more animal power, a lot more resilience on walking than we do right now. And, it's pretty brutal, right? And just imagine right now, I mean, what happened to people in the north of Gaza? Think of it right now, wherever you're sitting or standing or wherever you may be. If you're in your home, look around, just take a look around at your stuff, right? Your stuff, which some of it is, your personal hygiene stuff or your clothing or some of your valuables, your family photos, whatever it may be. Your favorite massage tool for me, which just helps me with my muscle problems. That stuff's gone. Like, imagine one day walking out of your house is now destroyed, and you have none of your stuff. You have the clothes on your back. If you're lucky, that didn't get hurt. So think about that for a second. And then it's cold, it's rainy, and you have to go somewhere without your family who's no longer with you, and you're destroyed about that. And then you're trying to deal with the elements, trying to find anybody who can help you as an adult if you're a kid. I mean, I can't even imagine what that must be like. And then on top of that, you have soldiers coming in and doing the crazy things that are going on, and then you have more things falling from the sky, and or people being snatched up like with Mansour. I mean, I'm just trying to make it real for us, to really feel our way through what a moment must be in time like that for people going through this. It's bad. And it seems like, again, I don't know what's inside of the heads of people, but it seems like the people on the side that are perpetrating this one-sided, it's not even a war, it's just an onslaught. And there is some combat, but, of course, the dynamics are totally, unfair. This is not looking like it has any time frame put to it. Like, the Israeli government has pretty much said, and this is Netanyahu basically saying he can manage the American pressure. And if that's true, that means it's going to continue indefinitely. I saw a video today that made me sick to my core. And it was a video of an Israeli soldier who said that they weren't the most moral army in the world because they haven't yet unalived all the civilians. That's what he basically said. He says Amalek. And if you don't know what Amalek is, it's a biblical reference to revenge on a people where they didn't want to spare anyone or anything, including animals or infants or women or any of that stuff. And Netanyahu mentioned that. Somebody told me that later he revised it to just talk about the age group. But, and we had a conversation with Christina. I don't know if Christina's here or not, but Christina and I talked about this. And, it may be that she's right. I hope she's wrong. But she said that right now, those of us who are advocating on behalf of Palestine should be saying that, the Israelis seem to have the intent to finish, quote unquote, the entirety of what they've started to do with respect to the population. I hope to God that's not true. My argument was, and again, I hope this is true, that it doesn't appear to be me that they'd be allowed to get away with it, even though they've been allowed to get away with this. Of course, one person being harmed, on purpose or, saying one thing and doing another is horrible, right? It's illegal, and it's been devastating, the number of people so far. But remember, there's a rather large population, and there are still many, many members of the population remaining, obviously. And so it would be a tremendous undertaking just to try to do it. If everybody in the world agreed to it, it'd be hard to do, right? It's logistically very difficult to do stuff like that. So, I mean, it's crazy to talk about that. So I don't think there's intent there. Here's what I do believe. I really believe this, and again, this is just one take, and I'm not in anybody's head, but I do believe that what it appears they want is, and they've said this, so I have no reason to doubt them, they want the land. They want to have the land, and they don't want the people to be there. And I don't think they really care. I don't think they care about who they do or don't hurt along the way. That's what it appears to be. And it's not that they just want it cleared for their purposes. They want to take it because they either see themselves as entitled to it, or they just want to be able to do it as a part of the greater movement, this greater Israel project they're talking about. So I don't believe they care as much about actually removing people from the world. They just want to remove them from the territory and have other people take them in as refugees. And I've heard people say that a lot too. But I think along the way, they have complete callous disregard, and they have no value put upon Palestinian life. I think that's pretty clear too, right? Now, I did see a photo op today, which somebody sent me, and it was and I've seen this is something you may not have seen. I've seen these videos, and maybe you have, but there are some people in Gaza, I know we've talked about this, who don't support the age group, right? Not everybody voted for the age group, right? It's like any other society. It's not a monolith. So they were showing video of people like angrily saying, why are you doing this to us? They were yelling about the leaders in Qatar and stuff and saying, why are you doing this to us? And then the Israelis were handing out some aid to them and photographing them, taking video of them being angrily shouting down their leadership. And I've seen this happen before, where the Israelis will go into like a beach and give people water who are thirsty, and then 10 minutes later the person's no longer above ground. I don't know if that's happened to these people, but I'm saying they're no charity case is what I'm trying to say. And they try to portray themselves. I see this on Twitter a lot, where aren't we great? Look how kind we are. Those people don't This is the other thing that really upsets me when I hear this line. You ever heard this one before? One woman said in a live, no joke, she goes, the only country in the region that cares about life is Israel. Everyone else doesn't care about life. They have no respect for the living. Like, what? What kind of twisted crap is that? And the thing I try to bring up is, I said this in one of my videos today I put out, everybody has moms or dads or parents they love, or they have grandparents, or they have brothers and sisters or cousins or community members or, whomever. And it's all the same set of feelings, right? And no one side has a monopoly on loving other people that in their families or in their communities. But that's an easier way to dehumanize somebody, right? To say that they don't regard life. All they want to do is be martyred in the cause. And that's just absurdity. Now, the fact that people place a premium on giving one's life up for a broader cause is where I think the term martyrdom comes in. It's not that they want people to die. It's that if you are someone who is willing to make the ultimate sacrifice for a cause outside of yourself for the rest of your people, that's to be praised. But it doesn't mean a hunger for death. Right? Am I missing something there? So anyway, I wonder sometimes what you have to wonder, what programming does somebody get growing up to make a statement like that? Are they told that the other person just is a lunatic and they don't want to be alive because all they want to do is harm our people and therefore they're whack jobs? Why would they want to harm your people? Just because they have hatred in their heart? Think of your own life. Do you have somebody down the street you want to go hurt right now for no reason? Probably not. Do you have somebody that's done something bad to you that if there weren't any repercussions, you'd want to give them a smack against the back of the head or whatever, some sort of minor retribution? Sure, you're like, yeah, if it was no trouble, I'd like to give that person a piece of my mind. People do things for reasons, right? They don't do them because they have nothing better to do on a Saturday morning. Now, that's not to say that what people do sometimes in terms of is okay or even acceptable, but it just says that it's rational. And so to make an irrational statement like the one where they just don't care about life is, in my mind, absurd and, delusional, quite frankly. So I hear a lot of that. The other thing I hear a lot about is, what was my experience to hold the beliefs you hold, Kellyanne? That's a great question. Boy, that's a lot to cover, right? Because, I'm 56, and I've had a lot of life experiences just like you have. Let me lay it down this way for the audience, and I talk about this a lot too, and we'll get back on stuff we're talking about with Gaza. But, I find this fascinating, by the way. Everyone has their take. Either you have your core beliefs, and then you have your take on a particular issue, right? And so I've never met anybody who thinks that their beliefs are wrong or their take on an issue is wrong. They may be more open to say, I don't know as much, or I could learn more about it. But most people have an idea, and they feel their idea is right, because then why wouldn't it? It's what you've encountered. It's what you've been through. It's the things you've heard about, maybe your family members, your school, the media, the culture you live in, the way you're made up as a human being. That all contributes to how you and I think about stuff. So I would say that for me, the biggest change in my life was the Gulf War. That was the biggest turning point in my life, where I really started to question everything. I had the introduction to the Israel-Palestine conflict right before I left to go to the Army. But being deployed to a war, there's something about knowing that your life's on the line. It just totally, your mortality starts to really, face you hard. And you think about it. I guess you're supposed to be some tough soldier that never thinks about it. That wasn't me. I was thinking about it quite a bit. But once you're there, it's like being on an airplane. Once you're on the plane, you just got to do the best you can to deal with the ride. But before you get on the plane, you're thinking about it a lot. So, but it made me really think and question, like, why are we really going here? Like, what's the point of all this? And for those who don't know, I was in the first Persian Gulf War back in 1990. And of course, the stated goal was to push out the Iraqi military that had invaded the state of Kuwait, the country of Kuwait, a small nation, very wealthy, oil-rich nation at the tip of the Persian Gulf. It sort of sits at the base of Iraq. So at the southeastern portion of Iraq. So anyway, so I was like, what the hell are we here for? And of course, it's so funny because if you hadn't heard this, they were trying to figure out different names. So there was something called Operation Desert Shield, which was the first people that were deployed to the region to keep anything further worse from happening, like no more invasions elsewhere. And then the second part of it was called Operation Desert Storm, and that was the part that I went to. So I was deployed, towards the end of 1990 and into 1991. And I was with what's called an armor unit, which is a bunch of tanks, and I was part of the 3rd Armored Division. You know what, it's funny too, I was in one of these pro-Israel lives, and they were just, this is how unpleasant some people can be. They were telling me I was stolen valor. I never served. They doubted I'd ever been in the military before. I must be a serial liar. It's like, what? What the hell are you talking? Anyway, so people who are just, I've never questioned anybody like that. I mean, why would you even say something like that to somebody? Anyway, so as a part of that war, when your life is on the line, you start to question, like, what the hell? So there was another name they were going to give this operation. I shit you not. They were going to call it Operation Iraqi Liberation. I'm not kidding. Operation Iraqi, that stands for oil. So I think they got rid of that name but that's what the war was about. The war was about oil. Let's face it, the United States and other Western countries are heavily dependent on oil. And if you don't know much the energy game, which again, one of the subjects is very important, so I've studied it at length. The United States didn't have enough oil to serve its needs in the 90s. It was now importing. It was an oil importing nation, not an exporting nation, which it is now, and I can tell you why. So we needed to make sure we have secure supplies of oil going back to the 70s, and we had our crisis from the 73 war, and then after that we wanted to make sure we had our ducks in a row so we wouldn't be on the short end of the stick. So the U.S. has bases and naval stuff, and it's in our interest to control the region and keep track of this stuff so we don't get stuck. And also remember that there are multinational corporations like British Petroleum and Chevron, Texaco, and ExxonMobil, all these companies, and they stand to benefit from going in and developing these oil fields. And usually the way it works is there's some kind of royalty system with the host nation, but a lot of the profits go to the oil companies because they have the technology and the expertise, and they do a lot of the work, and it's like a contracting business. And so it's big, it's ridiculously huge money, right? We know that. So if you have a country like Iraq that's nationalized its oil, like all the money goes to the Iraqi government, not to private companies, and you have a way of getting in there and changing that so it goes to private companies. Well, who owns the companies? The shareholders. Who are they? There's these rich people, right? And also you get a foothold in a region that's important to you strategically, so it's like a win-win. So, but anyway, we were told that it was this really evil guy that had occupied invaded this country. He was an evil dictator. He had to be pushed back to his capital, which is what we did. We pushed them out of there. So, but that shaped my experience a lot. You asked me what shaped my views. That was the first big step. So I also started to do, right when I was getting out of the Army, which was in 1992, I started reading a lot about ecological stuff because I figured, all the damage we were doing. And I was, if you don't know, when I was there were things called oil fires. I was stationed, I got exposed to everything under the sun: oil, chemical weapon dumps, burn pits, depleted uranium. They give us all these untested vaccines. We took these pills to prevent nerve agents, all this shit that was just really bad. And so now that's what I'm dealing with now in my later years. I'm just anyway, I don't want to talk about that. Anyway, so in getting out of there, I came back and started studying ecology. It's just something that really interested me. And I've always been sort of a nature buff, call me a tree hugger, whatever. I'm kind of proud of that. So that's what I learned a lot about it. The more books that I read, I was like, damn. So the more you read, sometimes it's like the truth is good to know, but sometimes it's like you wish you didn't know, because they say ignorance is bliss. And that's a very true axiom. But what I thought I learned at that time, I read a book by a guy named William Catton. It's called Overshoot. And I didn't know what overshoot meant, but if you don't know what overshoot is the idea that any species, human, otherwise, they eventually, if they're growing population, their population's increasing in size, there's a resource base from which they sustain themselves. And if they overshoot that resources base's capability of regenerating itself year after year, eventually the population can't be sustained. and therefore you have collapse. Now, obviously there was someone named Thomas Malthus who predicted this back in the 1700s. It turned out he was wrong because what? Fossil fuels were discovered, which changed the production of food entirely. So it was like a crutch that allowed us to get past that limit that was definitely coming up. He was right. He just didn't know about a new technology. And there may be other things that come up after this. But what William Catton argued is that modern industrial behavior, unabated, sort of business as usual, would put human beings into overshoot sometime between 2040 and 2070, most likely. And I was like, damn, that's messed up, right? That means that we're going to go through the collapse, human beings. And there are examples of this happening when certain travelers took deer that were not indigenous to a certain island. The deer population would explode because there was all this underbrush. They could just eat, no predators. And the deer population exploded, right? But then what happened was there's so many deer eating the brush every single season. Eventually it didn't grow back fast enough. And so what happened to the population? As the story goes, it crashed. It's no different. It's always the same thing. It's about calories because we talked earlier, water, food, and some protection from the elements, right? That's what we need. You don't have the food, you can't sustain your population. So that's that. So that shaped my view. So I decided not to have kids because I figured if I had children, I'm 56 now, my kids would probably be, 30. By the time they turn 50, they're right in the middle of this meat grinder, right? I didn't want to put anybody in the middle of that. I thought, now I could have been wrong, and I still could be wrong, and so could William Catton. But I just didn't think it was fair for me to do that given, and that sort of shaped my views ever since. I've studied that issue more than any other issue because it's the most important one ultimately to our survival. But that shaped my views a lot. Plus, I've been in, being in the military makes you a certain way. I went to a certain type of school growing up. I was in private schools, which was much to my benefit. I have some privilege, which I'm very thankful for. And I've never had to go work a job to make money during college. I got my scholarship in the Army, actually. So, it's like everybody else do. You've been through your experiences. I've been through mine. I've been a business guy my whole adult life, so I've had to start companies and figure out how to keep them alive and stuff. It's a lot of creative thinking there. You got to figure stuff out, right? You can't make excuses. You got to get it done. Just everyone has a different road as traveling. I've done some things. I've traveled some places. I've had a chance to meet people. I got to live outside the country for a good bit in Germany when I was in the Army. So seeing different perspectives, I think, is really helpful in rounding out your thinking. Because if you grow up in one place and you only see one group of people and you only get one version of reality, you tend to stay there, right? And it's hard to break from it after you've been in it forever. So I'm going to go sit down because my neck's starting to hurt me a little bit. Oh, excuse me. So, and by the way, in recent years, I don't know if I told you all this, I had a business that did pretty well back in 2018. It closed down in 2018, but it did very well. So I was able to live off the savings on that for a while. I'm sort of on the lowest end of that right now as we speak, which is what it is. But I took the time because I didn't know what I wanted to do next. I was kind of at a point where I was like, I don't know if you've been there in your life before. Maybe you're working a job now, but it may not be like your love. And it pays the bills and it gets you through your lifestyle. But so I was just like, what the hell do I want to do next? I've done all this other stuff. And so I was just voraciously reading and watching videos trying to figure some stuff out, and that's when I consumed a lot of this stuff too about what's going on with Ukraine. And of course I've had a lot of experience with this issue, but of course you get to do more and there's always something more to learn. So I kind of did about 4 straight years of just dead learning. Like I would read like 10 hours a day. I know it sounds crazy, but that's what I did. And so I've crammed a lot of stuff in my skull. And before I started doing this, just so you know, I was talking to a counselor because when you're a veteran, they assign somebody to you to talk to once a month so that you're not going to lose your mind or whatever. And a lot of us have PTSD and other long-term things going on with war. So I had talked to him about wanting to do this, something like just sharing some of what I've learned. But I thought no one would want to do it because I've told this story before. My family doesn't give a shit about any of this stuff. They just and then my friends don't really, just not their thing. I have a friend that's really into music and some other friends are really into sports, and this is just not something they like. So I thought nobody gave a shit. So, but when I got a chance to come on and talk about it, it was really cool that there's an audience for it. Where was I going? I didn't know. So in other words, I think what happens is in life, I don't know how your journey's been, but if you're not really sure what you want to do, you're not really sure what your purpose is, you kind of reach a point after trying 3 or 4 things, you're just like, nope, that wasn't it. You kind of got to buckle down and just try to figure it out. And I wasn't sure. I was kind of really frustrated by it, quite frankly. And it bothered me. It's like, why can't I figure this shit out? So I just started trying to dig into this, that, and the other, just try to figure out what I might want to do and try to think of stuff. So I did a lot of work in that space. And, it turns out, I think what I'm good at is like teaching and talking. And it was right under my nose the whole time. I had no idea why I was doing all this work and all this learning for my whole life. And here I am doing something that I really like to do. And I think I have enough packed in my head that, it's going to take me a while to get it all out. And the good news is it seems to be in a way that resonates. So it's kind of cool. But it took me a long time and a lot of, mental, like I didn't have it too rough. Obviously, I'm living in a very comfortable place, but just from mental stress of not really understanding what to do or what I want. Everybody has that sometime in their life, right? Yeah, guy. Well, listen, that's unfortunate, but I've addressed that quite a bit. And listen, I understand everyone's got issues to some degree, but I tell you what, it's not for tonight's talk. Just so you know, I'm just going to keep that out of the chat. I'm not going to do anything as far as that goes. Yeah. So listen, everyone has. I mean, maybe you're the exception. I think the Bible says, and I'm not Christian. It says, "May you without sin be the one to cast the first stone," meaning that we all have something in our lives that is not perfect about us. Maybe some are worse than others. Some people do things that send them to prison for 25 or 30 years. Some people do things that are socially unacceptable. Some people cheat on their husband or wife or whatever it may be. Who knows? But your life. I don't know yours. I've had my things. Everyone has something. And I think what we have to do is just try to accept our flaws and then work on them and try to get better on things that we screw up. I think that's the most important part, is trying to make things right. Anyway, so getting back to the story. So in learning all this stuff, it's been really cool to have a conversation. And of course, it actually turns out I got online not a couple days before, but a couple days after. At the time, I didn't remember this because my memory sucks. But I got on October 9th, and I actually didn't initially talk about the conflict. That's the crazy part. I didn't want to come guns a-blazing with my knowledge. I was just starting out on social media. I didn't want to sound like some expert, like, oh, I know. So I just started talking about other stuff like corporations and high net worth people and how the political system works. And you can go back and see my videos. You'll see my life. I didn't start talking about the conflict until probably about 4 or 5 days after I started. And then I just started talking about it. Like, why did this thing happen? Why did they do what they did? And it just kind of snowballed from there. And then, of course, the views picked up, and I had like 65,000 followers in like a week and a half. And then the account got taken down, and then same thing, account got taken down. It's happened 4 times in the first 5 weeks. And I thought, I guess I'm not welcome on TikTok. But then my primary account came back, and I've been trying to do it ever since. I've gotten lots of warnings. A lot of my lives have been taken down. You have to learn like what you can and can't say on different social media. And it's a challenge. And I'm always kind of dancing on eggshells here, unfortunately. So I try to be very careful what I do and what I talk about. I caught myself earlier. I almost said something you can't say here. It's funny. You speak another language, and then when you talk to somebody else, you find yourself speaking this like, hey, did you hear that person got unalive the other day? I'm like, what the hell does that mean? If you're talking to somebody else. Did I get tired? It's weird about phones. If somebody says, do you get tired of talking into the phone? I mean, it's weird. Like the first day or two you do it, it's really odd because you're not talking to a person. You're like looking at a device. And I don't know, you kind of just forget it's there, and you're just like you're talking to somebody after a while. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but I'm sure I think if you look at my early videos, I look really awkward. You're kind of like, and that's normal. But yeah, I think somebody's talking about, we talked earlier about the potential future being rocky. And I think that's the best case scenario of the future just being rocky in the United States. And I'm not a Debbie Downer. I mean, I'm all about optimism. But we've had it so good for so long here that people are like literally asleep at the wheel. Like people have no concept that something bad could happen. Like, well, that just happens over there. Like our government just does stuff to those people over there. But I think something's coming here. I really do. I don't know how soon it's going to be, but I think it's coming. But anyway, Reuben sandwich, we can tell you. Yeah, you can do TikTok. Somebody's asking if you can do TikTok on a computer. Yeah, you can do it on a computer. I think that the tools used to broadcast live on the computer, Eric Warsaw talked about this. He said they're not as easy to work with. They're a little clunky. And some of the quality of the video is not as good, depending upon it, because it goes through a different set of servers, I think. But the phone actually works pretty well. TikTok's a very impressive app. I don't know if you've heard of Gary Vaynerchuk, the guy who's a social media expert, but he says TikTok Live is like it's like the most amazing tool out there right now. And he said it's completely changed the game with respect to news and information and how people communicate. Somebody says, do I have a significant other? No. I've been very isolated for a long time. I think the last time I dated was like in 2019, and then before that was like 2014. I only had one date in like the last 9.5, 10 years. You're like, what's wrong with that? It's not on my radar. I know it sounds strange, but I did a lot of, dating when I was younger. So yeah, I got to get out more. I don't feel well. That's part of the problem is I feel sick all the time. And so it's hard to get excited to go out if you don't feel well. Yeah, that's funny. Good joke there, Z. I like that one. You can stick around. I'm just going to keep things on a quieter note. Yeah, dating's fun, right? I mean, if you meet somebody. But I think the other thing is the older we get, the more, you kind of entrenched in your ways. And it's harder and harder to kind of, someone is really where they are and you're where you are. And it's tougher sometimes. But other times it can be nice too, Depends on that. I'd say I'm not sick of, somebody says, are you sick of society? I'd say I'm disappointed and kind of disenfranchised with the whole thing. It seems like it's kind of a pointless endeavor to do things the way we're doing them, which is, you get a job and you work the job, you pay all these extensive bills, and then you get your little time on the weekend or your little time at the vacation, and then you get just like this repetitive cycle of not really living, Yeah, that's fair advice. I think that P. Diddy. Yeah, I mean, everything, like anything in life, it's all about making the effort, right? I always like to joke. I said, no one ever found their soulmate with somebody coming to knock on their door, right? You have to go out and meet somebody. Yeah, we talk about capitalism. Let's face it. I mean, capitalism is at the core of a lot of this, right? The inequality and people just get forgotten and discarded in a capitalist society. It's all geared towards people who have money making more of it. Now, having said that, if I was to talk to somebody who's wealthy right now, like someone like Patrick Bet-David or somebody like that, he would say it's the greatest system in the world because if you put your sights on something and you work your tail off and you make good decisions, you live a good life, that you can make it, right? You can make it work. And I don't disagree with that. I've had businesses my whole life, and if you work hard enough, and by the way, being self-employed is like 1,000 times harder than having a job. You're always on duty. You're working 6 or 7 days a week. You barely have time off to think. You're working 17, 18 hours a day just to start the damn thing. It's a tough role, especially now. I mean, now is the hardest it's ever been. Now in the digital space, it's a different thing now. There's more digital opportunities. But for someone like me, I'm just, I'm so clueless when it comes to this stuff. I don't know how to, I'm learning so much as fast as I can. Yeah, most likely. Someone says you need a woman to relieve your stress. I guess everybody needs some of that companionship, right? Yeah, somebody says you work more. Oh, yeah, I agree more. People think if you have your own company, and you can have freedom, but you have to build a big team. You have to build a team to work. And it takes a while because unless you have a lot of money to start with, you have to do it organically. So you have to build your company out of the profits you make, which can take a while, right? It can take a while to get contracts or you sell. And it goes back and forth. Sometimes you don't have steady customers, you lose customers. Businesses, it's work. It's a lot of work. Yeah, and by the way, most businesses, if you don't know, most businesses fail in the first 5 years. Something like 95% of all businesses fail in 5 years. That's someone says stay single. It's great. I don't know. I think everything has pros and cons, right? If you have a good partner or spouse and you like to do things together, that can be awesome. But if you have a spouse that you're kind of just tired of each other and you can't take it anymore, that's not too much fun. Yeah, we're all over the map. Some nights I don't have like a pure focus. It's just bouncing around. And somebody asked me how I came to believe what I believe, and I've just been following that lead to where it's taking us. But it's interesting. So I want to know. So if you don't, there's 250 people here. I don't know how old people are, where you're from, but do me a favor. If you're married, currently married, can you type in 1? And if you're currently single, type in 2. Or no, I'm sorry. If you're single, type in 1. If you're married, type in 2. That makes no sense. So 2 is married, 1 is single. Sorry, I screwed that up. So a lot of single people here. This is not my choice. I've had a screen for dates, by the way. I'm just curious. Yeah, somebody says the animals you live with are your best companions. I agree. I've always lived with animals, always. Okay, yeah, a lot of people here are married. And I think marriage, not having done it, but I think having seen people that do it successfully, they have this flexibility to kind of work with somebody else and not try to control them to be who they're not. And it's got to be hard sometimes because somebody can snore or somebody can be annoying in some ways. Somebody says oh wow, Alejandro has 12 dogs. Oh my goodness, that's awesome, Alejandro. Good for you, man. My new best friend, Alejandro. I love dogs. I love all animals. I mean, I have a hard time hurting anything ever. Like, I don't like to see anything die. Makes me sad. Somebody says too much compromising. Yeah, depending on how you're wired. I mean, some people, I'm probably a lot tougher to be that malleable figure than some people are. I don't have as much of that in me, but other people are really good. They have they like to have that connection, like the yin and the yang thing. And I have a friend who hates to be alone. I mean, literally hates to be alone. Can't stand it. And so for him not to be in a relationship is like misery. If he lived like I did for a week, he'd want to throw in the towel. But no. Yeah, somebody says I'm going with what I've heard people say, I'm not an expert at any of this stuff by any means. So take whatever I say with a grain of salt. But what I mean is, I think you have to actually meet somebody where they are. And the thing about marriage is, I think people grow, and some people grow differently. Like one person grows into this point, and you grow apart, right? And that can happen. It's nobody's fault. But I think it's all about how much you want to do it, right? So if you want to stay with somebody and whatever like the vows say, for better and for worse, for richer and poorer, sickness and in health. But it seems like most people nowadays, when they get married, they say those things, but it means like, until I decide I want to get divorced, right? And it's become so commonplace now. It's normal. More people, I think, get divorced than not in our society. And this is crazy too. I have a family member who's divorced. And what divorce means, and I didn't think about this much until I actually saw it happening in my orbit. And they have to buy two of everything. So the ex-husband has his place, and the mother has her place, and the kids go back and forth, and you have to have two sets of beds, two sets of clothing, two sets of clothes, everything down the line. It's unbelievable how much stuff that has to be bought in it. And how stupid is that? Think of how much stuff in America is bought because of divorce alone. We're living in a crazy time, I'm telling you, man. In the old days, you couldn't get divorced. You had to just work together. There was no such thing as like, I'm not happy. What? Anyway, we're very lucky. Okay, I've been talking now for, an hour and 15 minutes. Let me bring up Ghost, because Ghost was here first, and then I'm going to bring up Sheila, and we'll go from there.
I didn't be first again. Hi.
You get to go first. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm getting better slowly. I
Good.
feel
Yeah, you
much
weren't.
better than last time.
So you're feeling better than last time. That's good.
I don't know if you remember, I said I was sick. And, you
Yeah,
remember? Fine.
of course. Yeah.
So, yeah, you talk about so many things that I don't know how to collect my ideas.
It's
But
okay. You can pick one and tell
you
me where
can
I'm wrong or whatever.
yeah, you can help me a little. So there's one thing you talked about, and obviously, since I'm not on ground in Palestine, I am obviously watching videos and watching the news and hearing stories from my family there. And so I can't really talk about personal experience, but I've seen a few things and I've heard a few things that, for example, you talked about sharing the food, and I remember my brother had to. I'm talking about an example, right? I'm not bringing up my family here. Just yeah, don't be annoyed by that. I'm just saying an example. So many Palestinians and in Gaza live the same way. It's not just him, right? But you talked about sharing, so I wanted to give you this example that it wouldn't work other way. Okay, so Palestinians had to learn, especially in Gaza, had to learn sharing, because sometimes war, or maybe so many people are jobless and there are no options to make money when there's no war state. So in war states, it's just things are more difficult, but obviously different. So he said how when the danger is like near them, they go to family members or to friends. So I have this one brother who had to he lived in first before the war in Gaza. So when we say Gaza, we talk about the very north. We call this Gaza. People from Rafah, for example, from the south, call the
Hmm.
very north Gaza. So he used to live in Gaza, but then he traveled to Khan Yunis. So he was living in Khan Yunis when the war started. So things got really difficult for some reason when they came closer to Khan Yunis. So he had to to go travel to other family members, constantly travel, like leaving home to another home, because obviously you
Hmm.
don't want to stay with one family for too long, because each he doesn't go alone. Obviously he has family, he has a wife, he has kids. So the thing is, he said, I can't just go to them and be like casual sharing their food and that's it. Obviously sometimes I have to buy food myself, and to show them that I'm trying to do something, because they want to feel heavy, especially when many families come to stay together, because obviously there are no other options, as when the very north was completely empty for several months, as we saw that in the news and on TikTok also. So he said that my family is like four family members. Other families are so many. So when I had to buy something, for example, like something sweet, little, for my two kids, then I had to buy something for all the other kids, because I felt bad for them, and because I was
Yeah.
staying with them, and I had to show some generosity. How do you call that? How do you call that?
Generosity.
Genau, yes, exactly this. So he
Hmm.
said I had to use that, but this strategy doesn't work all the time, because obviously, as I said before, many people are jobless, so you have to have something to offer, right? So sharing could only work as much as you can obviously give, right? So
Sure.
you cannot give something more than you have. The problem is later on he left to live in the tent, which he does now. He said again, like, now I'm living in a one tent.
Yeah.
Actually, women are staying together one tent, and men together in one tent, several
Right.
families. So he said again about sharing. Sharing works, but when many people come together, then you have to make so many people. Uh, you don't want to make yourself not hated, but I'm saying, but you don't want to people feel heavy. So you have to do more. So my mom was telling him, why don't you fix the tent in a way, pay someone to get it so well fixed? He said, if I do this with this tent, then I have to do it with the other tent, and I don't have money for both.
Hmm.
So sometimes you have to walk upon yourself, just so the other people don't feel bad about themselves. He
Sure.
kept talking about sharing the food. So this is just one idea, and obviously, I heard also a story about people in Gaza. They're being starved so bad that they had to eat the food from animals.
Hmm.
That was just recently. It
Yeah, I
was
heard
like
that.
absolutely crazy, right?
Yeah.
And this is something probably we all like, because I remember also you brought up what if we were to have to live in a situation, for example, what if for a moment now network is cut off? How do you feel? Actually, I think about this so many times. What if now, if we're everywhere in a war situation, right? So it just makes me the whole situation, having no connection with like network to speak to people, having no ability to make money, having no ability to like no food. Oh my God, this is crazy, right?
Yeah.
So I really find this a nice opportunity to talk to you and to other people and to share these ideas. But there's one thing you also talked about. What was it? What was it about again? Um, um, yeah, one of the worst things actually that were cut off in this war, more than food sometimes, is medication.
Yeah.
Actually, I had lost two family members because of leak of medication. I have lost 2 aunts in this war.
Sorry to hear that.
There was no, yeah, one of them had to like, was is it called washing blood because her kidney is not working, and the other
Oh,
one
they call it dialysis, which is filtration of
dialysis,
one's
right?
blood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dialysis, right? We call this washing blood in
Okay.
Germany. Yeah, dialysis. So the other one was a bit old. Also, she needed medication, and she died because of that. And then the other family member I have lost is my cousin. He was shot. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to say these words. Um, TikTok, don't be mad with
Yeah.
me. In front of one of the hospitals, I think it was Al Shifa Hospital. And by the way, his mom does not know till this moment because my family hide it from her.
Yeah.
In yeah, it is very sad, but I have to tell you, for me, as I told you last time, I have become numb. And also because when you keep completely, like, constantly hearing someone is unalive, someone just gotten alive, when these words, you keep hearing them, they just become like your daily life. Oh my God, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So I can't lie to you that I'm becoming numb. It's scary.
Yeah.
So I think everybody, right? Everybody. I have seen many people talking about this in the comment section and under other videos, and it makes me so sad. But then again, I think this is the only reason why we're now strong enough to talk about this, to spread more awareness,
Yeah.
to want to put more effort and show the world. Although there's still many people, if you want to change something, then obviously you have to get many, many more people to understand this. I was just a few days ago. Germany is a difficult situation, right? I was talking to one German woman, and she said like, yeah, but Hamas, oh sorry, but the H group. I told her, I'm sorry, how much do you know about them? And the thing is, it just makes me feel crazy because I don't know if you heard that, you guys, here in Germany, if we hold like since the beginning of this catastrophe in Palestine, Gaza,
Yeah.
we can't hold a Palestinian flag outside of specific demonstrations. We
Mm.
cannot wear kufiyas, anything like that, because apparently they're worried that problems will occur on the streets, and then police has to interfere. But I don't think that's the case. I feel like it's because of their past,
Sure.
and it makes
Well,
yeah.
I was
Please.
going to say, I'm very sorry to hear about the losses that you've had in your family. I'm sorry that you
Yeah.
become numb to it too. It's so sad that we have a situation to which you can become numb.
Yeah.
That's the crazy part of it.
Um, Thank you very much. But the thing is, I didn't bring this up because I wanted people to have sympathy or anything with me. I'm just giving you examples that there's a lot more going on than what we know, and there's so many other people are being alive because there's no medication or hunger or even other reasons, maybe some of them we don't even know of. And I'm giving people more examples of ideas and ways that people could, I've even heard the story of, there was a woman, she used to live like alone in her house, and she was an older woman, she can't even hear.
Hmm.
So the whole house was destroyed on top of her head, and obviously she couldn't even scream because she can't
Hmm.
hear. So even when something was thrown on top of her house, she had no reaction, right? Probably. So she was unalived at the spot. It's almost crazy, and obviously we cannot start talking about the people that have, other problems. Maybe they can't walk, and maybe they can't. So we have to think about many more people, many more people, not just, you know, some stories of people that have to be amputated without anesthesia. It's just thinking about this makes like my
Yeah.
head. Ugh. And
Yeah, no doubt. I feel that frustration, and I can't imagine what it must be like to be on the ground living through that. And we saw what happened with Mansour. He was collected up by purportedly by the IDF. There was a photograph, I don't know if you've seen it, but it was a bunch of men
yeah, I
on their
heard that.
knees, blindfolded, with their hands behind their backs. And I don't know, the whole thing seems very undignified and unnecessary.
But I want people to know this, that this has been happening forever in Palestine.
Yeah.
This is not new. So it's just now that it's getting public, now that our people hearing from these stuff, which, or even the news, I don't know, I don't even watch the news, but I'm saying, do they show this stuff? Do they? They don't, right? It's just social media that we get this
Yeah.
information through, right?
Well, the American news, I don't watch it regularly anymore, but when I do see clips or I talk to people who do, show little bits of it, but not nearly as much as they should show it.
Yeah, I was once watching the news when they handed over German news, but not on TV. I don't watch TV. On YouTube, I was watching the live news on YouTube for some German news channel. I'm not sure anymore. And they
Mhm.
handed over, the age group handed over the hostages. So the moment the hostages were handed over, they cut off that because they didn't want to show the, the nice situation going on between the
Yeah.
hostages. Obviously they have shaked hands and they have thanked them and they have all of this. They cut it off, and then they shot the part in which they were handing them over to the other side. It was
Wow.
like, it's almost crazy how you're being so obvious. And even the comment section is being cut off. It's like they're trying their best. It's crazy. So there's no chance.
Yeah.
You cannot even say, why don't you show everything? Show everything. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
like
I
we
didn't
don't
know.
want to
Okay.
hear nothing. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming up, and I'm sorry to hear that your family members have been affected. I hope the rest of them can stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Okay. See you next time. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Yeah, that makes it real, right? Like I always say, I don't know anybody who lives in Palestine. I don't know anybody who lives in Israel, but it's got to be all too real for the family members who experience uh, the devastation on both sides, right? For civilians that get harmed, and even for soldiers, right? If you're somebody who has a loved one who's serving in a military capacity, when they don't survive, you have to feel the same amount of, it's tragic. Okay, I think Alejandro with his 12 dogs wanted to come up and talk, and then we'll have Sheila come in.
Good. Um, describe when you said that you ran out of water, shelter, it's cold, it's freezing, no food, people dying around. You described that is one of the reasons. I don't want to offend nobody. Okay, what I'm about to say, it's just my opinion. At 1820, watching the news of Africa, the kids starving and everything, and then I'm like, well, why doesn't God give them at least rain or something? And then I started realizing maybe I believe in the wrong God, and you you question a lot of things about what the German people had to go through after the guy with the mustache did the genocide he made in Germany, right? And I was thinking that how the German people suffered decades after that, everybody blaming them that they were evil. I
Yeah.
was wondering how many years is it going to take Israel to recuperate from this? If it ever recuperates, I don't think it's ever going to recuperate. Only digging a bigger hole, a deepest hole, like the ones the Russians did. They drilled underground to see how the depth of the earth was. I don't think they're ever gonna recuperate from this. This is gonna be. I figure it's gonna take 150 years, and I'm not gonna be alive to see the
Wow.
repercussions that the good people of Israel, because there's good people without a doubt, right? But just the
Yes.
government. I wonder how long is it gonna take for the for them to recuperate from this um um what do you call that name branding that they're going to be called all around the world. I mean, I would hate to see what all the good people are going to go through around the world when people accuse them of being same minded like Netanyahu's regime and all its generals are doing, because this is all the military uh, guilty of this. It's not all the people, right? I was wondering if there's ever going to be a court where they hold this. I want to call them assholes, culos, you know, hold
Yeah.
accountable. I would, I remember watching this tape in History Channel in eighth grade in 1984 or 85, where they were mentioning all the generals, and they were saying, so and so death by hanging, so and so death by execution. You put them against the wall. I wonder if I could
Yeah.
see that again while I'm alive, because that's and you describe that's the only reason that I changed to being an atheist, because there's once you die, I don't think you can suffer anymore. um the suffering you saw it in Desert Storm. You saw all the suffering. This is hell on earth. But I think that once you die, you actually relieve yourself from all the bullshit you gotta see on earth. And as the decades go by, more bullshit you get to see. And then sometimes, you know what? I was reading the news before I turned on to you, and this guy in Chicago, they were talking about this western suburbs, a couple that lost a son in the October 7th. And I'm like, you guys only lost one son. And then the guy in the interviewer, he's like, oh yeah, this happened when the age group unalive. He mentioned like 2,900 and 3,900 Israelites. And I'm like, where do you get your information, guy? And I've been watching WGN news since 30 years or whatever. And I just it made me want to write a letter to this guy, and I'm like, you're one of them, aren't you? But I would want to post it outside the WGN studios. You're one of who we're talking about, the Z's, mentioning all the unaliving that went on October 7th. It didn't even come close to 300 or 200 or something like that. And even
Well,
that was blowing out
let
of
me let me
proportion.
let me correct that. Listen, my understanding is, again, I don't want to downplay anybody else's suffering. I think that's really unfair. My understanding is this. I don't know the exact numbers. I think there was about 1,050 between that and 1,200 people that didn't survive that day on the Israeli side. Of that number, I've heard as many as a third were uniformed soldiers that worked in the various areas that surround that. Some had not been rest for the day yet when they were encountered by the militants. Then you have people at the Nova Festival, which were mostly young people, obviously, and there were supposedly H group members that went into certain kibbutzim and either took hostages or harmed people or both. And then we're not really clear in between all that what or how pervasive the Israeli military response was and who may have been caught up in that. But the idea is that probably the H group, best guess, probably my guess is around 600 to 700 people were involved there if they were responsible. The military may have been some of that. I don't want to say numbers like 300 because I don't. There's no reason to downplay it. It is what it is, right? But we're not really sure. Sorry to jump in. I just didn't want to. I don't want to downplay either side.
So for what she's got to go through. Like she mentioned, it's not. It's other people also suffering from other illnesses that have been already passed away to another dimension, right? And
But someone it was that 300 was the civilians, that everything else was uniform. So maybe I have my numbers wrong. Is that what you're
well,
talking about?
well, well, you know, that's a casualty of war because actually, I believe that the Netanyahu regime actually allowed this to happen so they could finish off what they had started decades ago. Like the Gold said, this has been happening for decades, but now through TikTok and social media, the whole world actually is looking at Israel with different eyes, you know, because of TikTok.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, TikTok is a great way. That's why they want to ban it. I wonder why. When they even Nikki Haley wants to ban TikTok. Why? Because their TikTok is the eyes and ears for us. Because nationally wide in the United States, they're not showing you nothing. Because I remember when Desert Storm came, it was on for 3 months, day and night. Right? You were serving. You were not in the States. You were
Yeah.
overseas. But this was going from morning to night. I mean, every 2 hours, 3 hours that every city had their news coming on. That's a
Right.
storm. That's a storm. That's a storm. And it was like a parade. Like, and then you know what? I actually thought it was a good idea because we needed the oil. Because I was actually thinking not brightly, and I was like 23, 24 years or in my early 20s, and now that you said that it was also an apartheid because of the oil, and it's sad to say, but it was because of the oil. That's why Saddam Hussein burned all those fields, and you said you had to inhale all those toxic fumes and chemicals. And he knew that the United States was coming for the oil. They were not, invading Iraq. You guys were not because you were actually part of it. But it was all because of the oil. So what he decided, how many flames he started? It must have been like 30,000 that had to be put out.
No, it wasn't 30,000. It was probably
Uh,
a few, maybe like 80 or 90, maybe 120. I'm not sure. It
well,
was more
because
like
it
that.
looked like a candle delight on the
Yeah.
news, or I don't know, maybe they were just blowing it out of proportion or something. I don't know,
It was a
but
lot. It was a lot. Yeah.
but now I'm gonna go to sleep tonight and pray to George Carlin because he's my God. Oh my God.
Yeah, he's a good man.
So, yeah, but great live, and I missed your other two. I had a couple of other points I wanted to talk to you about the mistake you did. We all make mistakes, and one thing I gotta tell you, a lot of people tell me, "Do you regret?" No, I don't regret. When I said it with love and with heart. And what is said is said. And even if you say I'm sorry or blah 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 or 1,000 excuses, it is what it is, and it's said and it's in the books. So
Yeah, I hear you.
as much they try to crucify you, well, don't we all make mistakes? And one other thing, the way we think, what do people make us think the way we think? Because if a Hispanic person does something, every Hispanic person is guilty. And if a white person goes into a school shooting, we all think that all the white people are crazy, psychotic, psychiatric, messed up in the head. So for one person that does a stupid act, we all get blamed for it. His own kind gets blamed for it. Am I right or wrong?
No, it's a lot of times you're right. Yeah, happens a lot.
And a lot of times, if somebody goes on a live and says, "Oh, I'm not racist," bullshit. Everybody's racist. Even me, I'm racist against my own kind too. Sometimes I don't like my own kind. Believe me, and I tell them, and I'll say it to their face. You know what? Because of you, they think we're all. You know what? I went on New York City, New York Joe guy and the Kaisa guy. They were all talking trash about you. And then, you know what they told me? You gotta go back to Mexico, swim over the border, and join your drug dealer friends. Oh, so just because I'm Mexican, I'm a drug dealer. Holy crap! Well, okay, I'll swim over the border, the river. I mean the whatever it's called, what borders the United States and Mexico. Are you gonna swim over the Indian Ocean, numbnuts? Oh, they all like, we don't like you, Alejandro, this and that. I know, because you can't stand the truth. You call me a drug dealer just because I'm Hispanic. So, and I call you invader then. Huh? How's that? And no, man, they just don't like me. And another girl, PG too, another Mexican Zionist. I go, you know what? You're a poor excuse, girl. You just want a little bit fame on TikTok, but don't go to Mexico, please, girl, because it's ridiculous. This chick that she's Mexican and all in a sudden she's a 100% Zionist, and they call me 100% anti-Semitic. Well, I don't care. I don't care if you want to call me anti-Semitic. I really don't. To tell you the truth. And I'll let you guys talk about the other person that wants to give his point of view. But thanks for having me again, and stay strong. We are all strong. You should. I was reading the comments. There's a lot of people giving you trash. Pay no attention to those numbnuts, because they know they're losing the battle, and they will lose the battle in a half a year or a year from now. I don't know how long this atrocity is gonna take. Keep going, but I hope it finishes, and I hope it just stops. That's all I'm hoping, because I don't think I'm gonna get to see another mess of atrocity that I've already been witnesses to, that we witness every day as we wake up. Every day, it's just unbelievable. I don't even have a name to call these people. I used to call them maggots, but I'm like, wait a minute, a maggot actually does a good job. Gets rid of the carcass. There's no name to name these people.
We don't want to say that, but thank you, Alejandro. I appreciate you.
No, because that's my favorite word. I call everything, I call my little dogs maggots. Hey, little maggot. Hey, little cute maggot.
I hear you. Okay, thank you very much, Alejandro. Have a good night. Yeah, I listen, we've all, I've said and done things in my life, and I'm just certainly we're idiotic, and I don't want to use terms like that to describe me. I think that's over the top. There's the dehumanization stuff where it makes someone less than, that's the worst of us, right? That's, anyway. And I saw a tweet one time that said, it was a picture of a person who was very pro-Israeli, I mean, extremely so, very pro-Zionist, and it was an IDF boot about to step on a cockroach, and it had like a keffiyeh on a cockroach. And so, that kind of stuff is just, has no place, it's garbage, right? Yeah, so, yeah, and we all may know what cancel culture is. It's a lot of the time, and if somebody does something wrong or says something wrong or whatever, I've always looked at it like this, in terms of how I view people. Is the substance of what somebody says and does worthy? If it's good and somebody does something I think is, unfortunate, I tend to be more open-minded about wanting the good part to overshadow the part that I don't like as much. Not everybody's like that. Some people have a litmus test of, 0% problems, and if you cross any barriers that you're written off and you're to be scorned, and I understand that. That's a point of view to take. So, and again, as far as what to do with people, I try to be as polite as I can at all times to others. And obviously, like Alejandro says, we all have stuff flying around our heads for whatever reason. It doesn't usually happen in a vacuum, right? As like I said earlier, I don't think most people wake up and just hate somebody else for no reason. There's usually something that caused them to feel a certain way. Anyway, but it is good for us to be sensitive in how we express it and not be mean-spirited about it, right? I think that's also important. I agree with that. I don't always do as good a job of that as I would like to. Obviously, we're all imperfect and that stuff. Okay, we have Sheila wants to come up and talk. Sheila's been waiting very patiently, by the way. So Sheila, thank you for your patience. I really appreciate it. Hopefully she connects in after all that wait. There we go.
Hello.
Hi.
I just have a question. I come here with the most respect for everyone in this room, and I truly appreciate our free education we are all getting. But anybody in this room has never said words that you didn't mean the way that it actually come out. We're all human. Anybody that has watched you for any period of time knows that you don't hate no race of people, no nothing. You are a person of love and kindness. You have given us more than we got in 12 years in school. I'm 61 years old. I had not a clue what the other side of the world was going on, because you listen to your news and stuff and it's all lies. We living in an upside down world, and there was some haters in here earlier, and I just want them to sit and think about themselves. They have misspoken themselves. I know I'm guilty of this 5 folds. You'll say something and you'll mean it one way and it'll come out another, and people will take it and turn it and twist it and bend it and try to keep beating you up over it. We're all human here. We all make mistakes. Ain't none of us perfect. And we need to start treating each other like we're all equals in this world. Some of us has been blessed with more material things, some with poor hadn't been. The ones that has, I'm thankful that they have. I was raised a very poor person, still am, but I'm proud of my raising because I'm a survival. And getting back on the point, what you was discussing earlier about what if our electricity, our grid went down? It's a great possibility. Our sun can carry this grid out. People don't even know about the sunspots, and I understand why people don't can really sit down long enough, because they're working 2 jobs to try to keep a roof over their head, feed food for their kids and stuff. They've not got time to sit and look. They're not watching what's coming across our southern borders. They don't really realize that we're setting ourselves up for our own civil war here. And even if the best of possibilities, if that don't happen, the sun can do just as much damage as a missile that bursts up in the atmosphere and us lose our grid. What are we going to do then, people? Jill was not telling no fibs there. You better start getting you some seeds. If it ain't but one plant, try to grow that plant. Go to Walmart, buy you a plant, buy you a tomato plant, because it's in our near future. People really don't realize how it is coming, and it's going to be like a thief in the night. We're going to be sitting just like those poor innocent people in Gaza with nothing to eat, looking at your pets thinking, well, do I kill my pet to feed my child tonight? We can't even comprehend what those people's going through. We need to sit here and think about ourselves and what we can put out positive in this world and quit all this negativity, because we have been so blessed to live here in America. I mean, yeah, we got our government ain't worth a foo, and anybody that's been on the poor end of it can very well verify that. But at the same token, we as people, it doesn't matter who you are, you have love somewhere in you. You have to love, or I would think you can. There's love in everybody. I hope they are. If it ain't, then we all in a rude awakening. But getting back, people do need to start paying attention to your environment, because that very well could happen to us. We could be sitting in a Gaza situation. I mean, just by our sun, not no catastrophe of a war, but I think we got some bad troubles coming to us on other aspects. And honestly, our government has won out, done to other nations and countries to where I'm ashamed to even say. I mean, they have went and stole the other countries' resources and destroyed their economics. Here, those poor people is coming over here thinking that this is a beautiful place to live. It's land of opportunity. I'm going to have my family. We're going to have a house. And that's all lies. That's what, people, we're fighting from hand to mouth right now to keep food on the table. And those poor people that's coming from I'm not saying that all those people that's coming here is coming to bring harm to us. I'm sure the majority of them is just trying to get their family to some safe environment and for them to have food on their table, because we went and stole their resources, destroyed their economy. And just like we're participating, well, not us, the people, but our government is with Israel, destroying those poor people. And we could be just like those people. So people don't need to be hating here. We need to come together. We got an opportunity. This man that is standing before us, he's a very well-educated person. We are so blessed to have had someone with a knowledge and the ability to bring it across. Did he make a mistake by wording something the wrong way? If anybody has said in one of his lives or anything, any amount of time, knows this man brings no harm to no one. He couldn't even much more hurt an animal, let alone think bad about a human being. This is one of the most precious jewels that ever what God you worship has brought into our lives, to bring us all together, not to fight. If you want to fight, carry on, go on, and there's plenty of rooms on TikTok. Go on down there and do whatever you want. We're here for an education. We're here to love each other. Try to figure out how we as human beings can bring this society together and build back this beautiful earth that we call home, that we're destroying every day by, just like Chip was talking about, when you divorce, you have to have two of everything. We over just all this stuff, going out buying stuff unnecessary. Go get you some dirt in your hands. Grow you some food. If it ain't but one little plant, because in the near future, I promise you, if things keep going the way that things is going now, our government has got us in a whole lot of trouble, and they booming and banging at our back door, and we fixing to we sowed. Our government deserves it. We don't. But we're the poor people. We're the ones going to be left out. I'll say one thing about Putin. He cares enough for his people. He has got fallout shelters for them. We ain't got a damn thing. We ain't even got a storm shelter. That tells you about our government. That's all I need to say, Chip.
For those of you, thank you, Sheila. For those of you who want to follow Sheila, you can just tap on the box and her profile will come up and you can just click follow, because people said they want to follow you. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Thank you so much. Yeah. A lot of possibilities in the future here. And, I just count my lucky stars every day that I get up and I can, just be in a place where I'm safe for 24 hours. So that alone is great, much less all the other things that are amazing to be thankful for. And I agree that everybody screws up, and sometimes the screw ups are bigger than others. The question is, where do you go with it? What do you make of yourself after you do it? Get up off the ground, brush yourself, and get back up on the horse and keep going. I did a lot of thinking about as far as the next steps on these kind of things, and you wonder, shouldn't I, whatever. I think the best thing to do is I think other people want people who are speaking out about things to be silenced by trying to find ways to bring them down a notch or two. And that's understandable. It's how some people take care of things. I don't do that. Even if I don't like what somebody says, I want to learn from them and try to have common ground, but not everybody does it that way. And sometimes, unfortunately, people go after you, so to speak. And probably not going to be the end of it, probably just the beginning of something like that. But the point is, as long as the right things are being spoken and the right topics are being discussed in a way that's fair and civil and polite and decent, the rest of that stuff can be put to the side. It is what it is, right? So I think we have. Let me see here. I think we have. We're right at the end. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. For those of us who are in the queue, I apologize to you, but I've been getting so little sleep lately that I have to get some sleep. I don't know why. My sleep's been really bad, and that's why I look so ragged right now. But I'm going to finish the program tonight at 10 o'clock sharp, because that's what I usually do. So before we do that, though, in case you want to come back, I'll be on again tomorrow at 12 noon. So I apologize to those of you whose comments I didn't get to, or if you're somebody that wanted to come up and talk and I didn't get you tonight, I'm sorry, I'll do it. I usually go as long as I need to handle the guests. I'm just wiped out. But if you do want to follow me, my normal schedule it's posted on my main page under my messages. There's a little green banner that tells you my schedule. But I'll just say it. It's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, like tonight, from 8 p.m. Eastern Time to 10 p.m. And then every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday from 12 noon, like tomorrow, until about 2 p.m. Sometimes on the weekends I'll go a little longer, especially if I have time to do it. I'll go as long as I can. But the other thing is, if you want to find my social media, just to let you know, there's a link in my bio. It says Linktree Chip Barnes. And if you're in the United States, it's got a little clickable chain next to it. You click on that and you can see stuff. Just as a heads up, on my Twitter feed, there's a post at the very top, and there's a lot of names of people that I've learned a lot from. So if you think, some of the stuff that I share with you resonates, there's a lot of great people there to follow that have their own unique angle and their own learning path that's probably well advanced of mine, because I learned much of what I share with you, I learned from those folks. So it's about 35 or 40 names, and then a bunch of YouTube sites that I spend time on periodically, and people who I have a lot of admiration for and appreciation for. And then of course there's some Telegram groups. If you're somebody who likes to converse with other people and post images and videos, there's some groups you can be a part of. It's kind of fun. And then at the bottom, and this is not to be stressed because this is not the main point of me doing any of this, just it is what it is. But like you and I got some basic bills that I'm trying to meet with the other work I'm doing. So if you want to help out, I have a $5 a month Patreon. That's not a get-rich-quick scheme, and you couldn't guess. And the goal for me is to build a big enough audience over time that I can do this all the time and focus all my energies on this, because I like doing it, and hopefully you do too. So it's self-explanatory. If you want to help out, great. And for those of you who are thinking about the people in Gaza like I am tonight, I'm going to nod my head for a second and take about 30 seconds, and I'm going to just have a moment of silence for those folks. Yeah, I hope every child that's going through trauma and every person that's there suffering right now can find some solace in a moment of kindness and decency or comfort, and hopefully aid can get to those people, and medical, and all the horror show can come to an end and a ceasefire. Someone did mention earlier, just to bring it up, and we'll talk about it again tomorrow, that there's a meeting, there's some stuff being talked about in Paris about a possible ceasefire. So I'll elaborate on that again. So fingers crossed, the sooner the better. And I know that from the Israeli point of view, they want to make sure they're safe. I respect that. And but the suffering that's accompanying the response, I think, is just a little too much to bear for most of us. And that's why we feel so strongly about this. So, well, when somebody says that wasn't a minute, I didn't mean a full minute, a moment I should have said. Sorry if you are holding me to my literal statement. Anyway, that's what I have for tonight for everybody. I'll be going again tomorrow at 12 noon. I really appreciate the guests. I don't know if I saw any mods in here tonight, but if you were, thank you for helping. I didn't see it, but if you did, thank you. And for anybody who provided the different TikTok related gifts, thank you very much. I really appreciate the support, and I'll see you all tomorrow.